Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Heather Lewis. I'm the acting manager of the International Recruitment and Services Department at Sault College, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar today. We know a lot of you have questions about the very unique situation that we are all living and working through, and you're about to begin studying through. And so I'm very happy to introduce Elizabeth Long and Zia Sumar. They are joining us from Long Mangoji. It's an immigration law firm based out of Toronto. They are both immigration lawyers, and I'm very happy to say that they've come today to provide a webinar and also be answering some of your questions in the background. So I will pass it to Elizabeth and to Zia. Thank you very much for this opportunity today. And we're very excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's always great to be here. All right, so today what we are going to concentrate on talking about is what you should know when you are applying, in the stage of applying for your study permit. First thing I just want to touch upon is just to make sure you guys are applying for a study permit. Why are you applying for a study permit? What is it for? So a study permit is required if you are going to study in a program in Canada of over 6 months. If you're in Canada, it's under 6 months, you actually don't need to have a study permit, okay? You can only get a study permit if you are applying to a designated learning institution, okay? And of course, Sault College is one of those designated learning institutions. It's not all designated learning institutions will allow you to get the postgrad work permit. It's only usually public, the colleges and universities. And Sault College is one of those public colleges that will allow you to get the postgrad work permit afterwards. A lot of people get confused between a study permit and a student visa. A study permit allows you to study in Canada. A student visa allows you to travel to Canada if you to study in Canada. So student visa is for people from certain countries who need visas to come to Canada. Not everyone needs a visa, but if you are from certain countries, for example, India, Vietnam, China, etc., you'll need a visa. And when you apply for your study permit for the first time at a visa post outside of Canada, you will get both your study permit and a student visa together. And then later on, if you're coming to Canada and you want to extend your stay in Canada, you will probably only get a student permit to allow you to study in Canada. And if you wanted to travel afterwards, you would have to apply separately for the visa. So what is required for a study permit? There are a few elements that the immigration officers are looking at when they decide whether or not to approve a study permit. First of all, you have to be accepted into this school, right? You have to show the acceptance letter. You really have to show that you intend to study. The intention to study is something where, especially for students who haven't been studying for a while, it's something that oftentimes officers may wonder about. Why is it that you wanted to study in this program? And what we normally advise our clients to do is to provide a study plan and a statement as to how it is that this particular program fits into your career goals. One of the nice things about this period of time, let's look at some of the good things that can happen, is that if you, and we're going to talk about this later, if you apply to study, you can actually study online right now outside in your own home country. And even if your study permit isn't approved yet, if you have started studying, it really does show that you intend to study. So there is something there to the silver lining in the cloud to show that you actually do intend to study if you start studying already. You need to have funds to study. You need to have funds to show that you've paid the tuition, and that you have also, you can afford your living expenses. Again, the silver lining is that if you are living at home while you're studying online, then you don't need that many funds to fund your living expenses for the first semester. So that could also help with showing your funds. If you are going to apply through the SDS, you are supposed to put the funds in your GICs. And that also helps to show that you have funds to study as well. You have to show that you intend to follow the laws of Canada and leave when you are required. This, whenever we look at rejections, this, for I would say 90% of rejections, is tick marked in the rejection letter. It's not necessarily that you have to show that you intend not to immigrate to Canada and you don't want to stay in Canada on a long-term basis. However, when a visa officer looks at your case, they will often want to see that you at least, even if you couldn't stay in Canada, you would at least have something where you would have something to go back to. They also look at your travel history to see, do you have a good history of travel? Just because you don't have a travel history does not mean that your application would not be approved. However, if you have traveled to many other countries before and you have never overstayed or violated any laws in those countries, then that's also a good record. Also, if you have been rejected before from in previous application anywhere else, you should, there's a question on your form that asks you about that. And if you answer incorrectly, the officer will have a negative inference on your credibility, okay? Because they can see your record. And Canada often shares records with the US even. And so if they know and they find out that you lied on that question, that's a really, really bad inference as well. So even if you have applied before and you've been rejected, don't forget to put that and answer the question correctly when you're filling out your forms. When we're talking about family members, you can apply for your spouse. Spouses are people you're married to, but also they can include common law. And if someone who you have lived with for at least 1 year in a spousal-like situation. And spouses can qualify for open work permits. If you have children, they can go to public school up to the high school level for free in Canada if you have a study permit. Now, if you do want to bring your family members to Canada, you do also have to show that you have funds to support them, savings to support them, even if they don't work in Canada when you apply for your study permit. All right, let's get to the meat of, I think, what a lot of you guys are here for, is to look at some of the conditions about, studying during the pandemic. So let's talk about travel bans. Currently, if you don't have a study permit approved before March 18th, and you're not from the United States, or you're not traveling from the United States, then you won't be able to even get on the airplane. The airlines are going to stop you from even boarding the plane, unless you fall into some other exceptions. For example, you have family members who are in Canada, etc. Okay. Now, even if you can get on the plane, that does not necessarily mean that when you get to the Canadian airport or you drive to the Canadian border, that you're going to be allowed to come into Canada. Because there's a second stop there where the CBSA, the customs officers at the borders, they're going to be looking at your case. And when you come into Canada, they're going to say, well, why do you need to be in Canada? Oh, I have to study in Canada. Well, aren't your classes online? And if you say yes, and you don't have a letter, if you have a reason to be in Canada for, you have to be physically in Canada to take labs, you have to, play on a sports team, etc. You should get a letter from the college to say that you need to be in Canada for some specific reason. Otherwise, the officers at the border may still turn you back, because they will feel that your entry to Canada and your stay in Canada is discretionary and optional if all of your classes are online and you can take your classes online. If you are lucky enough to be inside Canada and you hold your study permit, okay, and all of your classes online, don't worry about your postgrad work permit. You're fine. You'll still get your postgrad work permit, even if you're taking your classes online because of COVID. Okay, this is only because of COVID. Normally, if over 50% of your classes are online, then you won't be able to get the postgrad work permit. But because of COVID, don't worry about that. If your classes are canceled or you have to study part-time and you are inside of Canada because of COVID, you can still keep your student status and you can work part-time unless it's essential services. And right now it's only until the end of summer. We'll see if they extend that afterwards. But if your classes are canceled because of COVID, it's okay. You can work part-time, not full-time, unless it's a scheduled break. You can work part-time unless it's essential services. If you are applying for your study permit inside Canada, and even if they ask you to do biometrics, don't worry. The biometrics exemption is in place for people who are applying inside Canada and you don't have, you can't do biometrics because all the biometric centers are closed. Now, this is only for people applying for inside Canada for temporary status, such as study permits. And finally, if you are inside Canada and you are out of status, but you did have status on January 30th, instead of the 90 days to file the restoration of status, for this year only, limited time, you have until the end of the year to file your restoration of status. So all of these things are completely new for the COVID situation. And what we tell you today is true today as we know it, but very well it could change, and tomorrow, the next week, likely will change next month. Okay, so you need to keep up to date on this. We have a COVID webpage where we try to update on certain provisions on there. You can go on the IRCC website to take a look at that, and also you can ask your school as well. But do try to keep up to date on some of these provisions. Now, I do want to talk about the new process for study permits if you're going to be applying from outside of Canada for this fall semester as well. So first of all, you don't apply by paper to the VACs, okay, visa application centers. Apply online. You don't need to submit biometrics and medicals right away, okay, especially if they're not available. Now, the government has instituted a brand new process that is a layer before the study permit approval. You yourself are still applying as normal. You don't have to submit into a new process for the approvals in principle. You just submit as normal, okay? But what normally would have happened pre-COVID is that the government would take your application and they're going to either approve your study permit or not approve your study permit. And if they approve your study permit, then you would travel to Canada and you would get your study permit at the airport and you would study in Canada. Now, because of the travel ban and everything and your inability in a lot of places to get the biometrics and medicals, what's happening is the government has put in another measure where if you apply and you don't have your medicals or biometrics yet, the government officers are still going to evaluate your application, and they can give you an approval in principle, AIP. And with that approval in principle, you can be pretty well assured that your study permit, once you do your biometrics and your medicals, and you don't have any issues with your criminality, criminal records, or medical issues, that you would be able to get a study permit approval. Okay, so this AIP gives you a little bit of assurance, even though you haven't done your biometrics or medicals yet, that you are likely going to get your study permit at the end, barring any medical or criminal issues. Okay. Now, once the center's open and you're able to do the biometrics and medicals, then the AIP will turn into a study permit approval letter. With that approval letter, once the travel restrictions are lifted, you can travel to Canada and study in Canada. So, like I said before, when you come to Canada with the current travel restrictions, even if you had that study permit approval, before March 18th, if all of your studies are online right now, okay, you may not be able to enter Canada. So please be aware of that. Even if you have your study permit approval, it doesn't mean that right now you can travel to Canada. And finally, this was just confirmed yesterday. There was some confusion. Some websites said one thing on the IRCC website and another website said something else. We had a meeting with the Canadian Bar Association, had a meeting yesterday with the heads of the IRCC yesterday, and they did confirm right now that even if you don't have your approval in principle, as long as you have applied before September 15th for your study permit, you can start studying. And those studies will count towards your postgrad work permit. Right now, if you do at least 50% of your program in Canada. Now that second part, 50% of your overall program in Canada, is the law today, is the policy today. But who knows? It might very well change come January if the travel restrictions are not lifted. Okay, so stay tuned for that. But the good news is, even if you don't have your AIP yet, and given the backlog in the study permit processing, a lot of people may not get their AIPs before school starts. So the thing to take away from this is that's okay. Even if you've applied, you don't have your AIP yet, you have just submitted the application. When you submit the application, you should get a confirmation on the website saying that you've submitted the application, okay? As long as you have submitted the application, keep that screenshot, okay? As long as you have submitted the application and you start studying, once you get the study permit approval, and you can apply for the postgrad work permit when you finish your program based on those studies, even if that time that you studied, you didn't actually have the study permit approval or the AIP yet. Just a quick word, once you do come to Canada, about working while you're studying, okay? You do need to be full-time students in Canada in order to work while you're studying, except in the last semester of school. If you are on campus, you can work full-time on campus, okay? If you are off campus, you can work up to 20 hours while you're taking classes and full-time during scheduled breaks, like summer breaks, okay? If you are in Canada right now, you can work full-time for essential services until the end of the summer. That may be extended afterwards, but so far it's only until the end of summer, August 31st, okay? Co-op. If you are going to be doing co-op, my advice to you is to apply for the co-op work permit the same time as your study permit, because it will be a pain in the neck afterwards if you get your study permit first and then afterwards you have to apply for your co-op work permit afterwards. There's a period of time when you would have to wait for the work permit, and who knows if you can get your work permit in time when you need to start the co-op work permit. So if you have a co-op program, co-op programs means this work is an essential part of you completing your program, okay? And you normally would have to work in the co-op program more than 20 hours a week. So you can't just rely on a study permit to do that. You are able to get a co-op work permit to allow you to work full-time off campus if it is part of your study program. So my advice to you, apply for the work permit, co-op work permit together with your study permit. Okay. When you come to Canada, if you haven't started studying yet, you cannot work because you're not a full-time student yet, okay, until you actually start your program. And when your program ends, we just did a webinar last week for students who are in Canada, who are about to graduate, okay? It is online, it is on our website, and you can take a look at that. But once your program ends, you cannot work. Once you get that completion letter, don't work until you have applied for your postgrad work permit. And once you have applied for your postgrad work permit, you can start working immediately. All right, so let's go through a process timeline. What should you do? Okay, I would apply for your study permit and co-op work permit. If you haven't done so yet, do it now. Okay, if your medicals are available, great. You can do your medicals and you can apply under the SDS. But even if you can't do your medicals, just apply. Even if you don't qualify for SDS, it's okay. We have a normal program for study permits, and as long as you have applied, you can study online now. And even if you don't get an approval yet, you can study online now and have it count towards your postgrad work permit. When your biometrics centers are open, when your medicals are done, okay, then you do it. And then once your study permit, they ask you for your passport. Yay, your study permit is going to be approved. Send in your passport, and hopefully your visa application center will be open then. Keep up to date about when you can travel to Canada, okay? Right now, for most of you, you probably won't be able to travel to Canada, but the travel ban will not be forever. So policies are changing fast. Before you even buy the ticket, make sure you can travel to Canada, okay? And one last thing, if your application is rejected, you need to contact a lawyer right away, okay? There are strict timelines for when you can file the notice to the federal court that you want to do a judicial review, to review your case. And even though the courts have been closed for a little while and there are some relaxations of the rules for when the court has closed, there are still deadlines that you have to meet. So, sometimes people come to me, 6 months later and they say, oh, I don't feel like it was fair. I want to, review my case. It's too late for me then to file the federal court notice. The deadline is 60 days from the date of rejection. Okay. All right. So this is our contact information. If you had any questions, we do offer a discounted consultation fee if you wanted to have individual consultation about your plans, about your situation, okay? But if you might want to try the school first to see if they can answer a lot of your questions, especially about attending classes and about your situation. We do have a COVID update page here as well. And if you wanted to take a look, we try to keep it up to date with as many relevant COVID updates as possible. Join us on social media. We're there as well. We do try to post updates as well there. Okay. All right, Zia, let's have some questions.
Great. Yeah, we've gotten some great questions, Elizabeth. So to start, you mentioned about the AIP, and you talked about how students can start studying even before receiving the AIP. Is that correct?
Yes. So there was some confusion on the IRCC websites before, but it has been confirmed that if you start studying online in your home country before before you actually get the study permit, that time that you start studying online is still counted towards your postgrad work permit, the amount. So if you study for 1 year, you get a 1 year postgrad work permit. If you study for 2-year program, you get a 3-year postgrad work permit. If you do a 1-year program and another 1-year program, you get a 3-year postgrad work permit.
Okay, fantastic. So as long as the study permit application itself is submitted before September 15th, then we're good to start studying.
Yes.
Perfect. You mentioned right now about the postgrad work permit. What happens if, let's say I'm doing a 1-year course. I start my first semester, I do my first semester online, and then because it's a 1-year course, I just have the second semester left to finish the program. Will I still qualify for the postgrad work permit if I do that entire program completely online outside of Canada?
So right now the law is that you have to have 50% of your program done inside Canada. You and I, we've discussed this extensively. We think that the government may change this policy if you guys are still not able to travel to Canada in January. However, that's just us guessing, okay? Stay tuned, because the government will probably, have updates to their policies later on this year, okay? But right now the law is that you can only do 50% outside of Canada. What happens if they don't change their policy? In that case, what you could do is you could defer the semester, the winter semester, and then do it when you actually have the second semester, when you can actually come to Canada.
Perfect, thanks. Also, do you know, after you've received that AIP, is it still possible for the study permit application itself to be refused?
It is, but it's normally only rejected if you have issues with medical issues and police certificates, criminal issues, because after AIP, for the AIP to be approved, they've already looked at those factors that I was telling you guys about, what they look at, whether or not you genuinely intend to study, whether or not you have funds, etc. So that is already assessed. Once the AIP is given, the second assessment is only on your medicals, biometrics, police certificates. And so if you don't have any issues there, then you can rest fairly assured that your study permit will be approved eventually.
Okay. If I submitted my application, let's say months ago, and now they've talked about this AIP, does it still apply to me, or do I need to reapply?
You don't need to reapply. Don't worry about it. The AIP is something that the immigration is doing internally. If you have applied, then sit tight. You are going to be, the earlier you apply, the more front of the line you have. Don't take your application out and go into the back of the line anymore, okay? Just sit tight and wait for your application to be assessed.
Perfect. Elizabeth, can spouses come with a student?
Yes, you can apply for your spouse to either come as an accompanying, and you can apply just as a visitor, or for your spouse to get a work permit. But if you do apply for your family to come over, you better ensure that you have enough funds to fund their stay in Canada once you guys can travel to Canada.
Okay, great. And then our next question that we have is just about biometrics. If we can't get them right now, can we still qualify for the AIP? Can we still start studying?
Yes, the AIP is issued before you do your biometrics. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. It was very nice meeting you, and all the best, and hope we'll see you in Canada soon.